everyone, it's Flirty Friday. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Susanna, the date maven, and I want to let you know that today's Flirty Friday is just a little bit different for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is I'm doing this solo. Producer Chrissy went to Kansas City, and I miss her, and so I'm doing this on my own. So if I make mistakes, just understand that, you do the best you can with what you have. I went live, and that is a win for me. So I'm joined by Janet. How did we meet, Janet? Janet Federico. I'm trying to remember.
We were introduced by Shiana.
Oh, by a mutual friend. Shiana's like, okay, hopefully she's watching. Maybe she'll watch this weekend. And Janet and I have run into each other a number of different times over the last couple years, run in some similar circles. And one of the things that is immediately apparent when you meet Janet is a passion and commitment and dedication. And I want to have Janet share a little bit about her organization, what they're doing for women, and the timeliness of this. Let me maybe just kind of back the train up a little bit. Oftentimes on Flirty Fridays, as the name implies, we are talking about dating tips and dating opportunities, social events, specific flirting strategies, social strategies, and it's usually light and it's fun, and we try to share some information, but it's usable, actionable information. However, I'm very much aware that everyone has a different story, no matter what their age in life. I work with people from 20s to 70s, and you would be hard-pressed to find someone who hasn't had some kind of negative relationship experience or relationship trauma, or just a story that they think, I don't ever want to go back to that. I don't ever want to repeat that again. And they're often very concerned with how do I make sure I do it different this time? And that could be mildly, that could be severely. So along those lines, Janet reminded me that it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I appreciate you reminding me of that. I used to be a little more tuned into those things when I was working on a board for a nonprofit that dealt with domestic violence. And so I said, well, I'm going to wear my purple, which is the color for that. And so Thrive ICT is your organization, and just give us kind of the basic, in case someone's watching who's never heard of it before. Mm-hmm. What are you? Who do you serve? I know you've got an event coming up later that we'll talk about that as well. But I think this is a good opportunity to really educate people about some of the resources that are available in overcoming trauma and abuse. And then, because I believe everyone is wired for relationship, whether it's a relationship with a cat, a dog, a human, a horse, we do have that need. It is part of our just sort of fundamental, absolutely, what makes us human. So we'll talk about how to go on and seek a healthy, loving relationship post-trauma, post-abuse. So that's my long introduction. Thanks for hanging in there for that. So Janet, tell us a little bit more about Thrive ICT.
Well, first, thank you for having me on. We really appreciate it. So Thrive ICT is a nonprofit here in Wichita that is devoted to the long-term support of survivors of trauma. So we are not crisis services. We say we fill the void. So we step in when the crisis ends. And that can be anywhere from 30 days to 2 years and 30 to 60 days, depending on, how deep your need for crisis services is at the beginning of your traumas, or at the beginning of the aftermath of your trauma. So we have ongoing support groups on a monthly basis, both for the trauma survivor and for partners, friends, relatives, caregivers, to learn about trauma and how to support the person in your life that may have been traumatized. We have a coffee social that we do monthly as well. Canceled this month because we have other events going on that we have to attend for domestic violence awareness. But and that's just an opportunity for, so often when survivors come together, it's in the form of some form of work, right? Therapy, support groups, other forms of supportive work. And so what we decided to do was have a social event every month. The audience is trauma survivors, and just come together, hang out. We have coffee at a local coffee shop. We talk about whatever, just happens to be on our minds at that moment in time. But it's not, it's the one time where we're not there to provide therapeutic support services. We're literally just hanging out, work on your social anxiety. Many of us have it. And just kind of be together with a safe group of people in a social situation.
So you said it's not designed to be therapy, and sometimes when people hear the word "come," my group is meeting, or I'm going to my group, or whatever, you think of either therapy or maybe an addictions kind of a process or something. So it's not necessarily standing up, "Hi, I'm Susanna, and I'm a blah 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 blah."
Correct.
It's just really social support.
We call it the coffee social.
Okay.
It's just there. And there are times we've our entire conversation was ways to pimp your ramen. I mean, seriously.
I love it.
Because you need that. And very often as a trauma survivor, when we attend events, it's hard to feel comfortable. You don't know who's safe. You don't know, you feel awkward. You feel like you've got, the scarlet letter T, maybe not an A. And so to have a social component where it's not intended to share your story, but to be among a group of people who, just by virtue of the fact that they're sitting at the table, means there is a shared understanding, can be very empowering.
So, and I think even someone who has not necessarily experienced trauma can probably get it, because if you experience loss and you're going through grief, whether it's the death of a loved one or a divorce, there's a period of time where you're sort of walking in the world feeling like, how can all this be going on?
Right.
How can everyone else be so normal? How can people be laughing and smiling and functioning and having a good time? And you feel very out of place in the world. And so I would imagine there might be a similar feeling for a trauma survivor. So those group sessions happen, and if someone's watching and thinking, ding, 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 I need to get my butt there, how can they find out about how to visit? Do they need to RSVP to you?
No, all of our groups, regardless of whether it is our actual support groups or our socials, are completely open. No registration required. Okay. You can find out all of our up-to-the-minute events are on our Facebook page, which is a public page, and we're on Thrive ICT, so facebook.com Thrive ICT. Our website, www.thriveICT.org, is not quite up to the minute, but generally
work in progress, as all websites are.
All websites
Mine should say that at the top. This is a work in progress.
Exactly, exactly. And then, of course, if you do need to reach out in person or want more detailed information than you find on our online properties, our phone number is 316-202-8653.
Okay. And so I know there are often a few people who watch this show who are outside of the Wichita area. So for them, I just want to say ICT is what we locals call Wichita.
Right.
ICT is our airport code.
That's right.
And so somehow it took on, a couple of years ago, people just started saying, yeah, I'm in the ICT, whatever. It's like we had to make ourselves sound cool and hip and everything. So you're not, I don't want them scratching their heads.
That's true. That's
Thrive
true.
ICT. What does the ICT stand for? It doesn't. It just means Wichita.
It just means Wichita, exactly.
All right. So outside of these social meetings, what are some of the other things that Thrive ICT is really committed to doing for survivors of trauma?
Well, like I said, our mission is to support the survivor over the long term. And we truly do mean that. Now, we are a young organization. We've only been in existence for 2 years, but my dream is like through the end of your life, like period. We're here forever. Because if you think about it, the analogy that I always like to use is our medical industry. And so if you relate those two things, you have an ER, right? You've broken a bone or some form of physical medical trauma. You go to the ER, and it's like, treat them and street them. Handle the emergency, get them going on their way, right? And that's kind of our crisis shelter system, right? We bring our survivors in, we handle their immediate needs for medical, protective orders, shelter, food, whatever, and that's that 30 to 60 days. Okay. And then after that, it depends on where you are. Same thing with when you leave the ER. Do you just need to see a primary care? Do you need physical therapy? Do you need more intensive intervention? What is that? So we've got some transitional periods. So we've got some great organizations here that do that as well. Transitional housing, et cetera. So that's that 2 years. 2 years to 30 to 60 days. But after that, there's really nothing. And in the medical world, you've got your primary care provider who you see on an ongoing basis, preventative care, maintenance, whatever you might need, but there's nothing in the trauma domain for that. And that's where Thrive ICT steps in. And so we are there to be the long-term support, whatever that might look like. We have some innovative programs. We definitely have ongoing support services, because trauma isn't always immediate. So we had one woman who, it was 20 years from the period of her assault to the day she walked through our doors.
Oh,
And in
yeah.
between, no, I wouldn't say necessarily that she didn't have any issues, but nothing that forced her to seek services.
I see.
Right, 20 years.
Yeah.
We've had survivors that are 4 years. Our longest period of time was 40 years. And so you never know when it's going to crop up.
Yeah.
And then even if you manage to process and integrate whatever that particular thing is, we don't control our environment. We don't
Right.
control the world around
Yeah.
us. And so you may be re-triggered.
Healing is not linear.
Correct.
No matter what the trauma is.
Very true.
And so, yeah, there are a lot of triggering factors in the environment, some of which might even occur on the evening news. We've
Correct.
had a lot going on in the whole current event scheme of things
Well,
lately
yeah.
that I would guess
Yes.
could possibly have re-triggered some people.
That is a true statement. I've had many phone calls, many text messages from women reaching out, wanting extra support. And not really knowing what to do or how to deal with what's happening in the news and how that translates to the workplace and their home life.
And people are talking about it. So it's not just on their television screen or on their radio, but suddenly all of their colleagues or their family members have an opinion
Exactly.
about sexual assault or whatever. And then they may or may not have actual experience. They may or may not know that that person
Exactly.
has experienced that. So they may not be speaking maliciously.
Correct.
It's just kind of part of water cooler conversation now. And sometimes even the most seemingly innocent conversation can be re-triggering.
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me if you can, protecting confidentiality, of course, are there any clients who came and received services and felt like they were supported and healing and reached a point where they said, I think I'm ready to start making new friends and start meeting new people and maybe even dipping my toes into the dating waters? And people have all kinds of fears and hesitations about that under so-called normal circumstances, but this adds an extra layer of just caution and concern. So anyone that you've worked with who was ready to kind of get that ball rolling, and how did you help them move forward there?
Yes. Well, the interesting thing about the work we do is that we have such a diversity of when clients come to us, that many of our clients are in new relationships already. But we have had one or two that were beginning the dating process. And it's really interesting to see kind of the common threads that come up, even if they've already remarried or they're in some form of long-term relationship. It's the same basic questions. It's just, when does it arrive in the relationship? The first and foremost is, when do I disclose my trauma?
Yeah.
How much information do I give? And then, of course, it's, the timing. The experts will tell you should not even consider getting into another relationship for like a year.
Okay.
But, human nature doesn't have a time clock on it.
Right. Funny how that works.
I mean, in my own case, it was 5 months.
Okay.
After 22 years.
Yeah.
And so, you don't control.
You can't always plan for those things
Right.
as much as you might try.
Exactly.
Sometimes there's this like almost divine timing that might be happening without your realizing it.
Exactly.
So if the sort of standard answer is 1 year, what is supposed to have happened in that year that would make the person most prepared for re-entering dating and relationship?
I would say some pretty intense work on your trauma.
Okay.
And by that, I mean whatever that looks like to you, whether it's, you've spent a good deal of time writing about it. But I think the theme of all trauma work is processing. And where are you in your ability to have integrated what happened to you, but also what does your skill set look like for coping? If you are triggered, or if some new event comes up, what does your coping skill set look like? Right. And then at some level, I think you need to have reached a point where your shame empowerment balance, shame's got to be way down here to be strong in a new relationship.
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. I want to ask you about the disclosure question, but I see we have a couple of, just people watching. I thought maybe we had some questions we needed to, hello! Yeah. Wanted to make sure I was not ignoring the questions. So as to the question of when to disclose, I've definitely had people ask me as their dating coach when they should disclose maybe like the loss of a child or an STD or something else that wouldn't necessarily be first date conversation, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably not one standard answer, at least that I give, and it has a lot to do with what I call kind of stair-stepping into intimacy, and there needs to be mutual disclosure. Okay,
Yes.
my turn, now your turn, now my turn, now your turn.
Right.
So how do you answer that?
Well, I always say not on the first date.
Yeah. There is so much not to do on the first date.
Right, exactly. My answer is it depends.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on where you are, how you feel. I think, and then honestly, I didn't even follow my own advice. I didn't have that advice at that point in time. I totally was like, I'm your worst nightmare. You do not want to deal with me. Like, this just happened, But I think it's a gut check moment, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But too often, I think as survivors, we haven't learned to check our gut. And to me, I would say that maybe you shouldn't be dating yet.
Okay.
Like, if you're not really tuned into how does this individual make me feel? I have a red flag. I'm not going to worry about when anyone thinks about me. This date is where it ends.
Okay.
You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like, things like that. Like, if you aren't at a point where you can truly understand your reactions, I would say don't disclose. If you're getting to a point where clearly it's become more than casual dating, then I think it's only fair to disclose at whatever level you're comfortable with. But disclosure can be, this happened to me and I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but just know it's there.
Okay.
You see
So
what I'm
it
saying?
doesn't mean you have to give every detail
Correct.
of the event. It could just be, I just need to put this on the table, but then we're going to put it also in the
Exactly.
closet for
Yeah.
a later time.
Right, because then
Yeah.
you've given the fairness of, I had a thing happen to me.
Right.
It's here. We are not at a stage where we need to disclose
Right.
these details, but if I freak out and can't have my back to a door, you need to know that this thing was here.
Right.
Right?
Sure. I think that's only fair because
Yeah.
that's the other person can only work with the information that you're giving them, and
Right.
you may be taking the opportunity away from yourselves if you kind of freak out and they don't know what's going on. How to
Exactly.
interpret that. What did I do? Did I
Right.
offend you? Did I hurt you? Just people tend to kind of own that even when it's not about them.
Very true.
So I'll share a story with you, someone I was working with, and I'll be curious to kind of see how you might have spoken to this person. I'm going to call her Diane. And she had been in some healthy long-term relationships, was single and dating and having a good time, and then met someone with whom she wanted to really move forward into a more intimate and kind of long-term monogamous relationship. And had been just kind of had that feeling of feeling like a teenager again. Everything's shiny and new and rainbows and unicorns and whatnot. But found that when she and her boyfriend would go to bed, there was a certain position that he would kind of arrange himself in. It was very snugly, lots of warmth, lots of body contact. And she said to me, there's a part of me that really loves that because I haven't had that in so long, and that makes me feel wanted, it makes me feel womanly. And there's another part of me that is flipping the F out and like I want to get out of my skin, and the fight or flight response was happening for her. She wasn't identifying it as that, but she was basically getting triggered into fight or flight.
Sure.
And she kept finding reasons like, I gotta get water. Oh, I forgot to brush my teeth. Oh, I'm gonna adjust the thermostat. Oh, I think we need an extra blanket. She kept getting up to get away from something that in her mind she thought otherwise should have been a really comforting embrace. And suddenly, she said the light bulb went on. She goes, I remember when my cousin and I were little and we would play house and he would lay with me that way, and then the things that ensued were inappropriate and uncomfortable and like no adult ever knew. And so that was something she'd had for decades.
Right.
And it was in her body, in her, I think, probably cellular memory or muscle memory or something. So I got to looking up somatic therapy for her. And this is not my area of expertise. I'm totally, if you're watching and you know something about this, please chime in because I'm not trained in this, but I just find it really fascinating. And so I learned that it's a kind of a body-centered therapy that takes the cognitively and emotionally, here's what happened to you, and then tries to repair or purge maybe where it's emotionally stored in the body so that there isn't that knee-jerk response, so it can be a more mindful response. Can you add anything to that definition, which I'm sure was not sufficient?
Well, I too am not a licensed therapist and do not consider myself an expert, though I've done some body work in my own recovery. I would say, first of all, and I'm going to steal the title of a book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? So there's a wonderful book by Bessel van der Kolk that I call it the Trauma Bible, but it's about how we store trauma in our bodies. And so my understanding, and broadly speaking, is that we call it body work. That body work is really helping you process through the traumas, because for instance, speaking from my own personal experience, the more I delve into some traumas that happened to me when I was a child, I stopped breathing. And my therapist is there to remind me, okay, we have to learn to breathe through this, you know, and or stopping in the moment if she can see I'm triggered. What are you feeling right now? Where are you feeling it? And because trauma survivors lose contact with their body very often. Interesting. To the point where you may not even realize it's a trauma that's causing this, but sometimes we bump into things a lot. We lose kind of like our sensory perception of where we physically stop in the world and things around us begin.
That's interesting.
And often that's because of dissociation, which when you are in a traumatic situation, your brain kicks in and kind of disconnects you from what's happening to you in the moment. We call that dissociation. And the more it happens, the more chronic it is, the more the tendency is there to be disconnected from yourself. Some cannot identify an emotion. Some people cannot actually feel a part of their body. And so and again, I'm not an expert, but my understanding of somatic therapy is it's a various methodologies to help you get back in contact with your body.
Okay.
And work through that.
And I would imagine that there might be some difficult and tender moments along the way, and rediscovering that contact. So you want to probably do that with someone who has done the training.
Exactly.
And,
please see a therapy professional.
I've been an advocate of meditation for a long time, and I could see that being a real aid or a real boost to that kind of work. So, all right, I see a few more people have joined in, and oh good, we've got a little thumbs up from someone. It may be too, you know, trauma is something that can happen to women or men.
Yes.
You provide services for men as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. And is it still the case that men are a little more reluctant to talk about it? Or is that changing?
I think once men know they're safe and can speak about it, they're they're very willing to speak. The gentlemen that come to us initially shared with me that they were very worried about two things. One, the stigma, but also two, of being demonized in the room. So they themselves, as survivors, were worried that in a room full of women who were most likely abused by men, that they would be demonized. And so it's been very humbling to have, especially when our sessions are mixed, to see the healing on both sides. And our women have shared with me that it's often very healing for them to have those gentlemen in the room, to see the commonality.
That's interesting. So I want to make sure that people can get a hold of you, because while we could sit here and try to tell stories or give general bits of advice, everyone's story probably really needs to be heard in more of a one-on-one environment rather than a Facebook interaction. That may not be where most people are comfortable kind of weighing in on it. So if what Janet has been talking about, if what I've been talking about is speaking to you or triggering something for you, we definitely, I'm very conscious of the fact this is a Friday, right? So like, you know, you don't want to like do something and then send people into the weekend kind of spinning and wondering. So what would be a way for them to reach out to you and to your organization?
Again, our phone number is 316-202-8653. However, in my personal opinion, the best way to reach us is really our Facebook message. We are a public page. You don't have to be on Facebook. But mainly just because we all, like, there are several of us that get that, and so any one of us can respond. And the phone calls come to me. And so you're reliant on my schedule. But, but it, you know, and then two, if you're truly feeling crisis, you know, triggered by this conversation, I would not call me. I would call ComCare Crisis or the Wichita, any one of the hotlines here in Wichita, which I don't know off the top of my head. because they can, help you in a crisis situation. But I'm happy to talk to anybody about the services.
And one thing I will say too, in my work as a dating coach, I've definitely met with people who I felt like, not to be offensive in any way or off-putting in any way, but sometimes I'll have that early stage conversation with them or exploratory conversation, and I'll realize they're not really ready for dating just yet. Mm-hmm. And so I might say, hey, I'd like for you to talk to this person first,
right,
and then come see me. And for me, that's about kind of being in integrity. It's also about being able to deliver something of value, because I could sit there and give the best advice all day long, but if that person's really not ready to take action on it, that's not the best use of their money or their time or their hopes.
Right.
So I will be straightforward, gentle, but direct if I'm having a conversation with someone and I think, there's one stop you need to make first before coming to me as your dating coach. And I think that's important. Because the last thing I would want would be to promise that person, oh, we're gonna find love by next Tuesday, and then they end up tripping over all these obstacles that are really, you just have to put the horse before the cart is what I'm trying to say. Now there's a fundraiser coming up later this month that just so happens to coincide with one of my favorite times of year because everybody gets to dress up and look crazy. Tell us a little bit about your event.
Well, you do get to dress up, but hopefully not look crazy.
Not too crazy.
So it's the Masks We Wear Cabaret, and so this year we're doing a throwback speakeasy right down to secret locations. So our ticket holders will get that location at midnight on the 26th. The event is the 27th.
That's fun.
We are keeping the fundraiser to the ticket price only, so no silent auction or anything like that. We are providing food, Prohibition-era cocktails, full cash bar. We're also going to have swing dance performances.
Oh, that's fun.
We've got lovely music by the duo 88 Diamonds, Kim and Marty Bowie, just amazing, sultry jazz. I cannot wait for that. Along with some acoustic jazz. And we're also having parlor games, and I think it's going to be a real fun night.
That's a great theme.
Yeah.
So if people want to get tickets, how do they get those?
You can go to thriveictcabaret.eventbeat.com, or even easier, go to our Facebook page.
And then click on events.
Yeah.
Click on the event. How about a shortcut for that?
Right. And we are also advertising over our Twitter and Instagram channels. So we're really blasting the link out there to get tickets.
We need to make sure that we put that link on the Date Maven Facebook page as well as the Susanna Matthews Facebook page so that those are easily accessed there. So once again, thank you so much, Janet, for being here. And I'm sure we have only scratched the surface of this topic. But if you are single and have experienced trauma and are thinking about the question of am I or am I not ready to move forward with maybe dating and relationship, then I would say maybe just a quick chat with one of us would be a good way to help ascertain that. I am here every Friday afternoon at 4 with Flirty Friday and a different guest each week. So if you have ideas for topics that you would like to see covered, please message those to me either through direct message on Facebook or even better would be email, and that's Susanna@thedatemaven.com, SUZANNA @thedatemaven, MAVEN.com. We do also try to post these videos onto the YouTube channel after the fact because I know not everybody's able to watch live at 4 p.m. on a Friday. So they do live on, and I can't remember what to tease you, who I have booked for next week, but why don't you join my blog? Then I will try to tease you there. I do blog for 360 Wichita, and then I also have the Date Maven blog as well. And if you're not yet receiving that, it's typically full of information on dating trends, what are the new technologies coming around for online dating, things to be aware of, any scams that you should maybe be mindful of, just any kind of like social trends that social scientists are observing that impact your dating life. So the way to get that is to go to thedatemaven.com and just sign up there. It's free every week. All right, it's time for the weekend to begin. And I hear rain and snow and all that stuff here in Kansas. So anyway, all right. Thanks again. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and be flirty.
Bye. Thank you.
Oops. Finish.